Hey, Diana, did you know that breakups can make you money?
Mark, that's the dumbest thing you've ever said.
Ladies and gentlemen, jurists and just curious, welcome to the Successful Barrister Podcast. Here you'll learn about marketing, management, and life skills for lawyers that probably won't get you disbarred. Hosted by Marc Whitehead, a seasoned lawyer who remembers when fax machines were cutting edge, and Diana Berry, attorney, COO, and the brains behind the scenes. Together, they are the legal world's most dynamic duo since statutes met regulations. So if you're looking to build a practice, not a prison, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Successful Barrister, where legal legends are made.
Welcome to the Successful Barrister Podcast, a podcast for lawyers about marketing, management, and life skills that probably won't get you disbarred. I'm Marc Whitehead, your host, alongside my co-host and COO of my law firm, Diana Berry. Hey, Diana, what's up?
Oh, not much. How are you doing, Mark?
I'm excellent. So what are we here to talk about today? Breakups. All right, let's be a little clear about that. We're going to talk about necessary endings.
In the book by Dr. Henry Cloud, is that right?
Yes. So this is a book, Necessary Endings by Dr. Henry Cloud, is a book that we had to read as an Atticus homework assignment. I would say probably 5, 6, 7 years ago. It's been a while.
You assigned it to me when I got here.
I did. It was a book that actually made a profound impact on me. And I actually wrote an article about it in the Successful Barrister newsletter, which you can all subscribe to, by the way.
So wait, why was it profound for you?
The premise of the book, Necessary Endings, is about what sometimes not to do, about things you should stop doing. And the analogy that they start off with in the book is about pruning a rose bush, of which I can say I have lots of rose bushes and I've never pruned a single one of them, which kind of goes a lot to show you why my rose bushes look so crappy.
Oh.
The agronomy behind it, that's a big word for me, agronomy.
I'm impressed.
You want to prune, cut off, do away with the roses that don't have the greatest potential. So the roses that do have the greatest potential can use all the nutrients and all the energy of the plant to produce the best roses. So the best looking rose bushes are bushes that the owner, i.e. not me, since I don't do it on my rose bushes, will go out periodically and prune off the second and third best roses so the best roses can flourish. That's the general analogy of the book.
Yeah, so I think a quote from the book is that pruning is strategic. It is the intentional cutting away of branches and buds that are good, but not the best, healthy, but not the best use of your resources.
Exactly. And so really it's about allocation of resources. So we all are limited in the resources that we can put into our business. We are limited in the amount of time that we can put into our business. We're limited in our energy supply. We're limited in our money, in the capital that we can invest in certain things when it comes to our business. So the concept here is that you want to invest your time, energy, and resources into the best projects in front of you. You want to put that into the best people, the best ideas, and to do that fully, you have to eliminate sometimes some good ideas that just don't rise to the level of being great ideas. And that is hard for people to do sometimes. It's hard for people to say no. I have a particular attorney in my office that I will not name by name, but this particular attorney has a hard time saying no. And sometimes this particular attorney will take cases that probably don't meet the best criteria because she doesn't, because she doesn't want to upset her referral sources.
I think you'd be fine. If you said he, you'd been in trouble. But
Yeah.
she, you're fine.
I have several she's. So the point being is that, if you want to increase the overall quality of your caseload, you have to say no to what I would call the C and D cases. You only accept the A and the B cases. You have to not accept the C and D. And to take the necessary ending analogy a little further, sometimes we do take cases, and when we get into them, we think what was an A or B case was a C case or a D case. So sometimes you need to come up with that necessary ending, that methodology for getting out of the case. Maybe you refer it to maybe a younger lawyer that's has a different criteria than you. Maybe you decline the case or gently give the file back to the client.
Well, I think what you're trying to say, Mark, is that the book is really about the intentional letting of things go, whether those be, you're going to talk about people, technology.
Right. Well, there's
different
a lot
ways that you've had to let things go.
There's lots of ways, that you can let things go. But really one of the things you want to think about is why do you hang on to the past? You get invested. It was a great idea a long time ago, but maybe its time has come and gone. Maybe it was your idea and you're just totally invested in it because it was your idea.
Well, and there's the whole economics principle of sunk cost too, right? You've put so much money into it.
Exactly. That is the hardest thing. And I remember, yes, I took 4 semesters of economics back at Texas A&M University, go Ags. And that was one of the key principles that we learned in every semester was sunk costs are irrelevant. It doesn't matter how much you put into a project. If the project no longer makes sense from an economic, financial standpoint or some reasonable business standpoint, you just have to let it go. Sunk costs are irrelevant. And, I think that's kind of the issue that we're talking about with breaking up is hard to do.
It is.
Whether it's an idea, whether it's a technology, whether it's a person, whether it might be a vendor that you've used for a long time, or just a methodology, a way you've done thing, a process or procedure that you've done forever is like, that's the worst excuse you ever had. Why do we do it this way? Because that's the way we've always done it. Yeah, that's the worst reason for ever doing anything. So those are some of the things we're going to talk about. So I'll have a whole list of necessary endings that I think are illustrative of the problem that I have gone through in my last 32 years. So when we come back, we're going to go through Marc's list of successes and necessary endings, failures, delays, hopefully ways that can make your life a little bit easier.
This podcast is sponsored by Marc Whitehead Associates, a national disability benefits law firm. Marc Whitehead runs a firm of over 60 dedicated people whose mission is to make a difference in the lives of our injured and disabled clients. Marc represents disabled claimants in Social Security disability, private disability insurance, and veterans disability claims in all 50 states. Marc Whitehead is double board certified in both Social Security disability law and personal injury trial law. Marc has litigated disability cases in over 40 states and counting and can help your clients too. Stop throwing your phone calls away. Call Marc Whitehead at 701-VIP-LEAD. That's 701-VIP-LEAD. Or visit our website at disabilitydenials.com. Referral fees are paid in all jurisdictions where it is permitted. Refer us your disability cases today and know that your clients will be in good hands.
So, Diana, we were going to go through a list of necessary endings that I have experienced over my 32 years of practice. But before I do, what about you? You've been here for 4 years now. Surely you have seen a few things come and go. I want to hear about your perspective.
Well, unfortunately, it's like a list of breakups that we're going through. So maybe this will be emotionally cathartic. In my first year here, we broke up with our MSP provider. What
the hell's an MSP?
They manage everything from our office Outlook to our accounts to cybersecurity, our switches in our office, basically anything internet and tech related, IT related. And I changed us, I think, less than a year of being here. And it was a big deal, and less big deal because it really only affected a certain number of people, basically me, who managed them, and people who really kind of were on the front lines of working directly with our IT company. But we switched because our IT company at the time was charging us a flat fee plus some. So if it was if they came out here, that was a trip charge. Then it was time while they were in here in office. And it just became financially cumbersome for a growing law firm. And so we shopped it. We talked to a couple of people that I knew, and we found a company now. If you're Houston-based, highly recommend Resolute. They do not pay me to say that. But look into Resolute for your MSP if you're about our firm size. They truly provide what I call a concierge IT service. I have definitely called them on my days off. I have texted them on Saturdays. Not the IT guys, but like my counterpart over there, the director over there. And they truly, one day, like, Marc's computer has gotten stolen. It has not worked. And I definitely call in there up here that day to get that working.
Okay, so we're definitely going to send Resolute a bill for that commercial that you just gave them.
No, we won't do that. We also switched PEOs the next year. So
right.
That one was a lot more forward facing with all of our team members.
Right. So what you hit on here, it was number 3 on my list actually, was vendors.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, we get into relationships with vendors, quite frankly, based on personal relationships, because they all have salespeople. The salespeople will come and schmooze you. They'll see you at a conference and they'll buy you a drink, or they'll buy you dinner, or they'll come to the office and bring donuts, or they'll take you out to play golf, or...
Well, and they're referrals too, right? So
right.
Someone probably told you, a friend of yours said, oh, this company is great.
Right.
And so you're like, oh, well, I trust my friend.
Right.
So
you get involved with a vendor, and here's what I have seen over the course of time, is that vendors, to hook you, they will give you their lowest rate. Mm-hmm. And then they'll try to bump you up year after year after year after year. And to an extent, that's understandable. I get it. But at some points, they outprice the value of the service that you're providing. And there are more competitive options out there. So sometimes you're changing vendor based strictly on price.
Absolutely.
So here's the other reason that I have seen that we've had to change vendors over the years is, you get a vendor that's, maybe at the initial growth stage of their business, okay? And you may be their biggest client or one of their biggest clients. And over the years, they grow and grow and grow. And all of a sudden, you're no longer on their top 20 list.
You're not in their strike zone anymore.
They're not in their strike zone, and so the customer service starts to fall off. This is what happened with our technology company, I believe, is that we were just no longer the size of the fish that they wanted to deal with. So their customer service fell off. And then they started charging for customer service. I'm like, I'm sorry. Customer service is implicit in the contract. I shouldn't have to pay extra for customer service.
Well, and I also think it depends on the size of your firm, too. We don't have in-house IT. So I think we're getting to that point where we may have that one day, and then our vendor relationship will need to change. And so as your firm evolves, as your in-house support changes, I think that you also need to consider your outsourced vendors.
So here's another example of a vendor that, we had to prune, and for a slightly different reason. So here's what I have seen. Now, this is particularly for SEO vendors, is usually they start off very small, and the owner of the company is the brains behind the scenes. And they're usually quite smart, and they really know what they're talking about, and they can, if they have a few clients, they can, do a bang-up job. But then what happens is they grow to a point where the owner can no longer also be the technician. And so the owner moves off and becomes the owner, and they hire people behind them to backfill and actually do the productive work. And those people in the back office, just aren't as good.
Yeah, they don't have the same passion for
They don't have the same passion for it. They're not as good. And the owner of the company literally doesn't know what's going on.
Sure.
I've had that. I've had to fire 2 separate SEO vendors because of the owner moved out of the technician role. And it was really the owner that had the expertise and knowledge, and they couldn't build a business that would support the original quality of service that they had. So, there are a lot of reasons over time, but, I would always suggest, every year or two that you look at your vendor list and just, who's still good, who was good, but maybe is slacking off, who's starting to get a little fat and happy, who's getting a little overpriced. And you need to look at that, and you have to do that with, an air of just ruthlessness because you're friends with these people. I mean,
Yep.
I used to play golf with this is, again, dating myself, my Yellow Page sales rep for years. And I stayed in the Yellow Pages. This is a necessary ending of mine that I did not make quick enough, that I let linger for a while, and it probably cost me money. I stayed in the Yellow Pages just because I was friends with my Yellow Page sales rep. He was at my bachelor party. I played golf with him all the
wow, Mark.
time, you know, and I stayed with him. And I'm like, there's this thing called the internet coming. You know, Yellow Pages are going extinct. But yeah, I stayed with him probably a year or two too long.
So what were the effects of that? So like, sure, we can talk about breakups, but what happens if you don't make the ending, if you don't break up with someone?
So I was spending resources, dollars, on the Yellow Pages that I should have been investing in that new internet web thingy technology called a website, you know, in building my website out and promoting my website more. I probably lost a couple of years there because I was not allocating my resources correctly. I was going, at that point, second and third best over what was the new and better thing, the new and better Rosebud.
So yeah, so it's opportunity cost, right? Another
Yeah.
economics term, right? So your opportunity cost of pursuing one thing means you can't do something else.
All right, so that leads us into number 2 on my list. We're kind of going in reverse order here, but so number 2 on my list was marketing tools. You know, or marketing channels rather. So there are various marketing channels out there that you can use. Our big ones are digital marketing, attorney referrals, client referrals, but there are other things out there that you can do. There are LSAs, there are PPCs, there, you know, are, TV, radio, as I said earlier, Yellow Pages, you know, and sometimes things work well for a while, but then they start to slack off, and you sometimes you make the mistake of sticking with them too long. LSAs would be a prime example. You know, when LSAs first came out, you know, maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago, I can't remember now exactly when they first started filtering in. You know, they were like the new blue ocean. There was not a whole lot of people doing them, and you could get into the LSAs and really do quite well. But nothing lasts forever. I mean, the word got out. Google started to get very proud of their product. They started up pricing, and all of a sudden, our return on our investment just started to plummet. Up until this year, we stopped LSAs. We cut it. We were paying $18,000 a month.
Oh, wow.
You know, well, that's $18,000 a month I could put into some other marketing channel. But we kind of stuck with the LSA, you know, until it kind of ran its course and it just really plummeted. And that's, you know, and it is weird because you hear different things in different markets. LSA is one of those things that can vary depending on what market you're in. In the Houston, Texas market, very tough. You know, if you're in El Paso, Texas, it might still work just great. I don't know. I talked about Yellow Pages. Used to work like gangbusters. Used to sign up 20 cases a month from the Yellow Pages. Easy. And it was one of those, you know, things that just, it ran its course. It was a technology that died because something else replaced it. There's a new technology out there, new Yellow Pages. It's called the internet. So, and even in the internet, there have been phases and cycles that you know, things that used to work that don't work anymore. So you have to always stay on top of things and be willing to change, be willing to stop doing certain things that cost you money so you can invest in other technologies. Okay, so here's number 1 on my list, practice areas. In other words, what type of service am I going to offer? You know, when I first started practice, I did personal injury work, I did bankruptcy work, and I did criminal work. And I will say that I really liked criminal law because it was interesting. And I probably did that a little bit longer than I should. The problem with criminal law is, from a business standpoint, it's a tough racket because very few people accused of crimes have a lot of money. So you're always bottom feeding. And so I had to make the decision at some point that, you know, I was getting offers to come do appointed work for a lot of the judges. And it was good, steady work. They paid you every day to come in and handle their docket that morning. You know, and it was interesting work. But eventually I got to the point where I had to say no. It was just taking up too much of my time relative to the money that they were paying me. I was getting paid $200 a day
No.
to handle the criminal docket. Liked hanging out with the people, liked the judge, liked the court staff. I knew the district attorneys because I used to work with them. You know, it was a good time. You know, I was out of there by 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in the morning. But still, just the hassle of going and doing all this for $200 a day eventually got to the point where I just can't afford to keep doing this. I had to stop. So that was for economic reasons. You know, we used to do a lot of bankruptcy work. I like doing bankruptcy work. The thing I really liked about bankruptcy work, it was cash money up front.
Exactly.
You know, you don't extend credit to people who are filing bankruptcy. They got to pay up front. So it was like getting paid up front for your work was really nice relative to, you know, doing personal injury work where you make good money, but you have to wait a long time, sometimes years to get paid. So it was a nice compliment. But at some point, and this necessary ending was actually shoved upon me by Congress, was they changed all the bankruptcy laws and made it unpalatable from my perspective to continue in that practice area. So I had to cut that practice area, which allowed me to spend more of my time building another little practice area that I was working on, which was disability law. And by cutting criminal and by cutting bankruptcy work, you know, I now had the time and resources to move into this other area of law called disability law, which I really found that I really liked. And then ultimately disability law grew to the point where it sort of shoved out personal injury law. And that was really the biggest, you know, that was really the biggest rosebud that I ever cut, because I used to make some decent cash doing personal injury work, doing car wrecks, trucking, premises, all that fun stuff that, you know, that PI lawyers do. But I had to make a conscious decision that I had to stop doing that because it was cutting into my ability to grow what I found to be the most enjoyable practice, and in my case, a more profitable practice of doing disability work. That was a really hard and necessary ending because I was so invested in that. I was board certified in PI law. I was president of the Houston Trial Lawyers Association. You know, I had a lot of sunk costs set up within our PI practice. And that was not, my wife thought I was crazy. You know, what are you doing? But it worked out. But I had to be able to go full bore and to develop what we've developed today into a full-fledged disability benefit law firm. I had to make that necessary ending. I had to cut and stop doing the PI work because it was physically draining me.
So I think the final topic that you wanted to talk about today in terms of necessary endings, Marc, was about people. This one's probably the hardest one because it's not a sunk cost. You can't really monetize it. I'm sure you can talk about how much you pay them, but it's really more of a relationship kind of soft.
Well, I would say this. It's not sunk costs, although to some extent I can make an argument that it is sunk cost. It's sunk emotion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you have people that have worked with you for some period of time, I mean, you've invested a lot of time in them. You've invested a lot of your emotional capital in people. You haven't invested a lot of money because
you trained them. Yeah.
You know, you've trained them. You've gone through the pain process of breaking them in and them not being productive for the first several months or more.
They're associated with your brand.
Yeah. They're associated with your brand. There's all sorts of, I'm going to call it sunk emotional cost.
I think this one's probably the hardest one to end because it's not really one of those things that you can quantify so easily because of that emotional cost.
Right. You know, and it's not just your employees, although from our context here, we're talking about the business of law. Yes, it's mostly your employees, but it can also be your clients. You can have clients that over time, you know, just become either an emotional or a time drag or even a money drag. You know, we're doing contingency fee work here, but let's say, for example, that you have an hourly billing practice and you have a client that you've had forever, you know, they might expect more and more and more, and yet they don't want to
give more.
They don't want to give more. They're used to when you used to bill them at $150 an hour, and now your billing rate's up to $400 an hour, and they won't go for it. They still want that original billable rate. Sort of the opposite of us when we say we were cutting vendors. This is the kind of the
other
opposite.
end
Now
of it.
you're the vendor and you're cutting the client. So sometimes you just outgrow the client, and you need to, make that shift. That's kind of what I did when we shifted practice areas. I didn't outgrow a specific client, but I outgrew a type of client. Then you have your personal relationships. Sometimes your personal relationships can be a drag on you. What do they say? You are the average of the 5 people that you hang out the most with. Well, you maybe want to look at those 5 people. Are there people in your lives that become a drag on you that you have to disassociate with? I've even heard the analogy of a spouse. I had have a friend within one of our organizations that related the story that she was going through a My Great Life exercise, and she broke down and started crying and realized she couldn't finish the exercise because she couldn't envision her life in 3 or 5 or 10 years from now with her, at that point,
Current spouse. Yeah, I know that story.
Just couldn't envision her life. And she realized that, she had to get out of it. Now, that's an extreme. I would never do that, Tina. I love you.
So when have you decided? Have you ever made a tough, necessary ending call on your people?
Oh, absolutely. We had a paralegal that had been with us for 17 years. I knew her family. She knew my wife.
So we'll walk us through it, Mark. So how did you get to that necessary ending?
So I will say that as we grew, she began to work in a section that was run by one of my other attorneys. And they just couldn't get along. They just couldn't get on the same page. And ultimately, I had to make the decision, do I give him full authority over his own section or not? And and to grow, you have to delegate this authority. You have to let them, if you're going to give somebody the responsibility to run a section, you've got to give them full responsibility. And that means including who they have a right to hire and who they have a right to fire. And I just, it kind of asked me, what, she's your hire. What do you want me to do? I'm like, it's your section. You have to make that decision. So I didn't make the decision. The decision I made was I delegated full authority to him.
Well, and you trusted in your attorney. You trusted in your leadership team.
Right. And it was a situation where the relationship had run its course. I mean, she was good when she was good, but towards the end, sometimes people just outgrow a job, or the job just leaves them. Maybe the job begins to outstrip their capabilities, their wants, desires.
And I think that this one's the hardest one to, first of all, quantify, like we've discussed, but also to understand the scope. So I think Harvard Business Review, I read an article once that difficult relationships, it was specifically about toxic relationships, but I think this works well. Here in Houston, we know this analogy well. They're like a hurricane. So you've got probably these 2 people that had that difficult relationship, and they're the eye of the hurricane. But as we know in Houston, the bands of the hurricane can be just as destructive to people and property as the eye, probably more so than the eye of the storm.
Especially if you're on the dirty side.
Especially if you're on the dirty side, right? So I think that one of the things that I've had to learn as I've evolved in my career is that if you've got a necessary ending potentially anyway with 2 people, it's likely creating bands of
Right.
Toxicity around your team.
The saying is kind of going back to the rose analogy. Everything has their season. And that relationship with that 17-year employee, I mean, it was a great relationship, and I value that, and I wouldn't have changed it. But everything has its season, and its time just came. It was good, and then it needed to change.
Yeah, and I think that if you can do it well, then hopefully the relationship can continue past the necessary ending. I think the book talks about, I think one of the quotes from the book is that without the ability to end things, people stay stuck, never becoming who they are meant to be, never accomplishing all that their talents and abilities should afford them. And that was one of the things that I first took from you, is that, sometimes I had to make a difficult call. I helped one of our attorneys make a difficult call very soon into my tenure here. And one of the first things she said to me, it's like, you know what? That person probably doesn't want to be here either, Diana. Like right now, you're not seeing really good work product. You should go let that person be who they can be.
It's funny. So I tell this story that, one of the most insightful things that I ever heard. And the thing that really got me in the Atticus sphere of influence was Mark Powers, the owner, president of Atticus. And this was 25 years ago, was speaking at a state bar event here in Texas. I don't even know what the event was. And he was basically going through the whole quality of life, work-life balance thing. But then one thing he said kind of stuck out to me. He goes, the quality of your life, and I said this a little bit earlier, but I'll flesh out the example. The quality of your life depends on the quality of the people you let in your front door.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go back to your office, and I want you to fire your worst client, and I want you to fire your worst employee. And it just struck me. I'm like, that is great advice. And I went back and I fired, oh my God, this horrible client. And back in the days in the PI world, sometimes you would have to loan your client money to have them get by. And I had loaned this person a lot of money, and I knew I should have gotten rid of the client, but I didn't want to, because I'd loaned them so much money that I wanted to get the case knocked out, so I get the money I loaned them back. And again, I was worried about the sunk cost.
Right.
And I finally went back and I fired that client. I felt so good. I mean, my whole week turned around, and I was like, I don't have to deal with this person anymore. What is she going to complain? If she complains, I'm going to give me my money. But, and I also got rid of an employee that, I don't want to revel in getting rid of people. I mean, they're human beings, but, this was an employee that clearly just was not happy being there. And would be better off going somewhere else. And I just had the frank conversation that I think it's time for you to go, and I will help you find another job if you want my help. But it was just a necessary ending. And but it was always funny. That was the very first thing, my very first exposure to Atticus at all was that moment.
Well, it's obviously made an impact on you. I think we spend so much time when we think about breakups or necessary endings, thinking, how do you get there, right? The emotional turmoil of getting to the idea of even thinking about a necessary ending, that we forget that it can be cathartic, and that there is another side to the necessary ending, which is growth and opportunity. So I think we're going to talk more about normalizing necessary endings in the next segment.
So we're going to end with the last segment, talk about normalizing necessary endings. We're going to tell you how we do that here at Marc Whitehead Associates. I'm Marc Whitehead, a lawyer, entrepreneur, and business coach. Thanks so much for tuning into the Successful Barrister Podcast. We have a blast creating it, and I hope you find it helpful. If our chats have sparked your interest, I'd love to hear from you. Shoot me an email at mark@markwhitehead.com. That's Mark spelled with a C. And join the Successful Barrister newsletter. Even better, let's hop on a call. I'd love to chat about how we can collaborate, share ideas, or just catch up. So we want to talk in this last segment about normalizing necessary endings, and how I think about it, how we sort of go about it here at the office. So now's a good time. So we're in just a few weeks, 10 days or so away from Halloween. We're in late October. So we start our next year planning. We start in November, because I like to get a rough draft, a dry run of what we are planning for the next year, kind of put together before Thanksgiving. And then we go off for Thanksgiving for a week or so, and then we come back, and then we have about 3 weeks in December before the Christmas holidays. So the December run is when we actually go over our plans and our budget, kind of a second time, and with a fine-tooth comb, and really lock it down. So we kind of take it in these two phases. You got about 3 weeks in November to do your preliminary planning, and then you come back, and then you have another 3 weeks in December to really nail it. And so one of the first things I like to do is look at the plan from last year and what we did this last year, meaning this year, as we come to the end of the year, and what didn't work, and what should we stop doing? In other words, what's on our stop doing list? I think that's where you start. You start your plan from what did you do this year that didn't work? Let's stop doing that. In other words, let's make a necessary ending. So we look at it in terms of budget. So we go through the budget. What were we spending this year? What was not productive? What can we cut? So the first thing you look at is, all right, what can we cut out of the budget? Okay. Why do we do that? Because when you cut things out of the budget, you free up cash to then maybe go try something new. For example, we cut LSA out of the budget because we looked at it, and we looked at our 17 different marketing channels and what was costing us a lot of money but not giving us much of a return, the LSA. So we cut that. We actually cut it more mid-year, but for our example here, we certainly would have cut it by the end of the year. But all of a sudden, it freed up about $18,000 a month in cash. Well, what can we do with that instead? So now we're starting to go through, and we're able to make some different marketing choices this year. What would we like to do? We're considering, a TV budget. We're considering a pay-per-click budget. We're considering doing enhanced attorney marketing or enhanced client marketing. We're considering doing bigger and bolder things in other areas because we freed up cash by making that necessary ending. We're probably going to make a few other necessary endings in our marketing budget. We're going to go through it. We have like a 5 or 6 page single space plan that we do every year, and we're going to go through it, and we're probably going to cut some things. Not everything that we're cutting is going to be money related. A lot of the things that we'll probably cut will be time related. We were trying to get involved with this organization or get involved with that organization, and maybe that just didn't pan out, didn't give us, wasn't fruitful, but it took a lot of our time, so maybe we're going to cut that to free up some time. Then I look at, our operational plan. What are we doing, or what initiatives did we do this year that may not be working, that we need to just cut, and put our effort and our resources other places? Can't think of any examples off the top of my head. Your operations, what do you think?
I am operations. I think that's in my title. I was just thinking of this AI tool that we decided not to renew about summertime because it was a couple months ago. As everyone knows, AI is just really new. And so everybody has an AI solution. Marc has mentioned it in a prior podcast, but signed short-term contracts with those because technology changes so quickly. And some of these are startups. And this technology, it didn't take, quote unquote, take with our team for the money that we were getting from it. But also by not renewing that particular AI tool, it took it out of the training process.
Right.
So like now it's not, okay, utilize this tool. Don't forget, are you using this tool and best practices on this tool? Now we're just trying to find something else that hopefully will work better and more seamlessly with our team.
Right. So we save time by not training our people on something that they didn't find very useful to begin with. And we're saving money. I think we saved, $8,000 on this tool that we were paying annually. So we cut that. Sometimes it's about, cutting things out of your processes and procedures. Maybe you have too many steps. Maybe you have some redundancy that you need to cut. There are lots of things that you can look at in ways to simplify and streamline. In other words, make some necessary endings within your processes and procedures to get to the ultimate goal: quicker, faster, cheaper, better.
Well, and also even with, Social Security, they make changes. A lot of changes actually very recently, I'd say this entire calendar year, they've made some changes that's really changed the way we do things operationally. And so our procedure manuals changed with the advent of a lot of technology to support the Social Security disability practice. We're trying to also change the way our people utilize that to hopefully get more return on their time.
Right. So it's all about planning for the future. And one of my favorite sayings is, don't trip over what's behind you. Mm-hmm. You got to keep moving forward. And sometimes when you hang on to old things, old people, old vendors, old processes, old procedures, old technology, you're tripping over what's behind you.
Yep. The book says endings are not only a part of life, they are a requirement for living and thriving.
Exactly. That's why I think this episode is perfect for right now. We're in late October. We're going to start our planning process in November and December. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make our stop doing list. These are the things that we're going to stop doing.
Oh, okay.
These are the things we're going to stop spending money on. These are the people that we're going to stop spending time and effort on, whether they be vendors or customers, clients, maybe even our own staff, but we're going to stop spending time, effort, and money, spending our treasure, whatever that happens to be, on these things. But that's the first thing you do before you decide what you're going to continue to do or the new things that you're going to add to what you're doing. Figure out what you're going to stop doing.
Mm-hmm.
Just it frees up your mental capacity to think in a bigger, bolder way.
Yeah, that's a great way to put that.
So anyway, with that, I would love to hear everybody's thoughts. Drop me an email at marc@marcwhitehead.com about your necessary endings.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to have discussions, talk shop. So just remember, Marc is spelled with a C. And with that, we're going to bring this episode to its own necessary ending.
Oh, I like that.
Because I need my coffee. I don't have my coffee in front of me. So need to get a quick snack. Go steal some chocolate from Diana's chocolate bowl.
Still too soon, Marc. Too soon.
I know, it is too soon. And with that, so we want to thank everybody for listening to the Successful Barrister Podcast, where legal legends are made. I'm Marc Whitehead.
And I'm Diana Berry.
And together we're the dynamic duo of law. Remember to rate and review us wherever you get your podcast. And if you've enjoyed this session, this podcast, please tell your friends, spread the word, and visit us at successfulbarrister.com. And do not forget to visit our sponsor, Marc Whitehead Associates, a national disability benefits law firm, at disabilitydenials.com. And with that, we're out of here.
Bye.